Here in front of me sits the Fujifilm GFX100RF, and next to it sits my trusty X100V. A lot of what I have learned as a street and documentary photographer comes from this little camera, and after using the GFX100RF for about a week, I've come to this conclusion. This video was made possible by Camera Warehouse, an Australian retailer since 2003 specializing in photographic gear. 100% Australian stock and warranty, no grey imports. So if you're looking to make your next purchase, head on over to their shop front here in Rockdale or go online to www.camera-warehouse.com.au. Back to the video. TLDR, the GFX100RF is essentially the big brother to the X100V. Obviously, there are major differences in hardware and specs due to the age gap between these two models, but I found that overall user experience to be very similar. Let's take a look and do a comparison. First, let's rattle off the main differences between the two. The X100V features an APS-C 26 megapixel X-Trans4 sensor and uses the X processor for image processing engine. The GFX100RF features a large format 102 megapixel backside illuminated CMOS 2 sensor and uses the X Processor 5 engine. The X100V has the smaller MPW126S battery, 1 UHS 1 SD card slot accessible via the battery compartment, and a single 2.5mm port. The GFX100RF uses the bigger MPW235 batteries, has two UHS 2 SD card slots accessible from the right side of the camera, and two 3.5mm ports for headphone and microphone on the left side of the camera. The X100V has a hybrid optical and electronic viewfinder system with a 0.66x magnification. The GFX100RF is electronic only, but with a 0.88x magnification. The X100V has a built-in flash. The GFX100RF does not. The X100V AF mode switch is located on the left side near the front of the camera. The GFX100RF has it located at the back of the top plate, next to the viewfinder. The rear OLED screen on the X100V is 3.69 million dots compared to the 5.76 million dots on the GFX100RF. The drive delete button on the X100V is located on the top plate next to the viewfinder. On the GFX100RF, it sits alongside the menu play and display back button. The X100V has a minimum base ISO of 160 and the GFX100RF is 80. The X100V has an engraved badge that says Fujinon lens system. The GFX100RF does not. The GFX100RF has an aspect ratio dial and a crop lever switch, which is absent on the X100V. The X100V has a fixed 23mm f2 lens, which translates to 35mm f3 equivalent in full frame, but I have the wide angle conversion lens attached, which brings it down to 28mm, matching that of the GFX100RF's fixed 35mm f4 lens, which equates to roughly a 28mm f3.2 in full frame. The max aperture on the X100V is f16, and on the GFX100RF it's f22. Overall, the joystick, dials, and switches on the GFX100RF are bigger and feel more tactile than the X100V. Both these cameras also don't have IBIS, which makes them even more similar. Everything that I find that I use frequently on the X100V, like the on-off switch, shutter button, ISO, and shutter speed dial, exposure compensation dial, and the aperture ring have not really changed, which is a great thing. Personally, the things I appreciate on the GFX100RF include the location and style of the AF mode switch, the joystick, which has more grip and surface area, making it easier to twiddle, the location of the 1/4-inch socket away from the battery door, the inclusion and access location of the dual card slots, and the USB-C port. And side note, shocking that the GFX100RF still uses the micro HDMI connection. And finally, the large 0.88x magnification viewfinder and 5.76 million dot display provides a marginal increase in viewing satisfaction. Gun to my head though, if you ask me which body I prefer the look of more, I would still say the X100V. Especially comparing the silver models, from the front the X100V just looks more balanced with the optical viewfinder and the built-in flash. The GFX100RF looks less cluttered, but that just accentuates its flaws, like it has a slightly bigger forehead. Slap that traditional Fujifilm logo that was on the X106 anniversary edition on there, and it might look a little bit better. And also, is it just me, or should they have painted the crop mode switch black? Because the more I look at it, the more distracting it becomes. Just a quick observation on the color rendition on these two cameras. I find them to be pretty different, with both cameras on the same settings and film simulations straight out of camera. I'll throw some examples up, but hopefully you can tell the difference between the X100V X-Trans4 sensor versus the GFX100RF BSI CMOS 2 sensor. Subjectively, which do you think looks nicer? I've got a sample scene set up here, and I tried to incorporate as many colors as I could possibly come up with in this one scene. And this is just to demonstrate, I guess, the image fidelity and the color differences between the GFX100RF and the X100V. I'm going to show them at various ISO levels, and it'll be straight out of camera JPEGs. The GFX100RF is going to be in the superfine JPEG, and the X100V will be in the fine. So all of these are going to be at f8. The shutter speed is set to auto. The film simulation will both be on Provia standard with no extra adjustments, and it's going to be single autofocus, and the focus box is going to be on the smaller setting, and it will be focused on that Leica logo on that can there. So that's kind of the control, I guess, for both tests. Okay, enough talking. Time to put the GFX100RF to the test and take it out for some real-world experimentation. While we're walking to the location where we're taking photos, I should adjust the settings on this camera here. Usually what I do is I set the ISO to auto, and I set my shutter speed to 1/500th of a second, and my aperture usually goes up to auto, but in this case I might try f8. It's at single autofocus. We're gonna leave it at single, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's go shooting. Took a photo just now and I forgot to change the settings. I forgot, by default, when you get this camera, it's going to be set to JPEG only. So make sure you set it to RAW as well, because you do want to work with RAW. And I also changed the aspect ratio to 4:3. Just finished off my coffee, and yeah, today's a great day to be outside taking photos. As you can see, the weather is kind of pretty bad, but I'm gonna make the most out of it and see what I can get with the GFX100RF. Let's spend a day shooting photos. So after shooting a couple of shots with the GFX100RF, I can definitely say that it feels slightly different to the X100V. Given the fact that this has a 102 megapixel resolution sensor, it becomes increasingly difficult to shoot at lower shutter speeds and maintain a certain sense of freezing the frame, so to speak. Shooting at anything lower than 1/500th of a second when I'm in motion and the subject that I'm taking of is in motion, it's not the same as when I use my X100V. Usually I'd be able to freeze that motion pretty easily, but on the 100RF it becomes a little bit more of a challenge. I find that doubling my usual shutter speed helps. So instead of shooting at 1/500th, I'd be shooting at 1/1000, and that way I have a better chance at getting rid of that motion blur. So initial findings, but I'm gonna keep taking photos and keep sharing my results as I go. Just before I start shooting at the Sydney Opera House, I just want to let you guys know a little bit more about the GFX100RF. Personally, I don't enjoy shooting in continuous autofocus with this camera. It doesn't feel as intuitive as the X100V, and coupled with the shutter speed thing, it doesn't make for a great experience. So what I found was I either shoot in fully manual mode and I use the back button focus and then fine tune with the focus ring, or I shoot with single point autofocus And what I do is I set the focus box to be a little bit smaller. So I need to be a little bit more intentional with, you know, pointing the autofocus box where exactly I want it in focus. Because it's such a big sensor and such high resolution, you really got to nail that focus sometimes. And it becomes a lot more obvious if you miss focus on a large format camera. Yes, it's the Opera House. What a great time to play around with the aspect ratio dial on the GFX100RF. Let's switch the GFX to X-Pan mode, 65 by 24. Not sure if you can see it, but let's back up a little bit more. Yeah, you can kind of see it. I've got to be honest with you guys, it's been 3 hours since taking photos here in the city, and about the aspect ratio dial, I have used it a total of 3 times. And the only aspect ratio that I changed it to was 65 by 24, which is X-Pan mode. And those shots were highly intentional. But the thing is, it doesn't really matter because I usually shoot in RAW anyway, and I crop in post. I guess it's good if you're trying to frame up inside the viewfinder, but if you've got an eye for these things, you probably don't really need the aspect ratio dial. And the thing is, and this is reported by many people who have used the GFX100RF already, is that if you're shooting strictly in RAW, no JPEG, you can't even use the aspect ratio dial. Hopefully they fix it in a future firmware update, but that's a big issue. Luckily for me, and I hope many other people, you would want to shoot with JPEG plus RAW, because those .raf files, those RAF files, are a pain in the ass to open up, especially in Windows computers, because you can't really see a preview of it. Anyways, sun's peeping out a little bit. I'm on the wrong side of the city. I'm gonna keep shooting. Now let's talk about the crop mode. The crop mode I actually used a little bit more than the aspect ratio dial. I find that cropping into an image, especially when they're far away, gives me a better idea of how to frame the shot. My only issue with the crop mode is when you crop all the way in, it does kind of make the screen, the viewfinder or the screen really grainy. Like it doesn't enhance the shooting experience that much. It just kind of punches in to whatever it is that you're viewing, and it's not the best experience, especially when you're looking through the viewfinder. So, you know, I used it for a while, and then I found myself not even using it at all because it just, I didn't like the experience of it. So yeah, those are the 2 new features of the GFX100RF. Did I use them that much? Not really. We're here at my local area, my local neighborhood stomping ground. And I thought, you know, I've only got a week with this camera. I need to make the most of it. Weather is great right now, so I think I can take this GFX out into an environment where it thrives, which is sunny, bright weather, and lets me confidently shoot at f11 at a good amount of shutter speed and a relatively low ISO. So I'm gonna take some photos and then show you guys what a nice quality image, the right settings, can look on a large format, high resolution camera. So let's get shooting. I really like this part of Hornsby. I always stop by to take a photo here. I think panorama will look great in this setting. We've arrived at Hornsby Station, and this is probably where I'm gonna hang about and take some photos. There's some nice light going on right now. And as you can see, I'm gonna make use of the light as much as I can. Okay, so the clouds are starting to roll in and things are starting to turn really quick. I don't think I got any amazing photos, but you know, these photos are a great demonstration of what the GFX100RF is capable of. I got a few more days with this camera. I'm trying to be as creative as I can when all odds are against me. But hey, you know, when you got a week with this camera, you only got a week with this camera, and you got to make the most out of it. So I'll see you in a bit. It is another riveting day in the city, and at least the weather's better now. One of the biggest benefits of the GFX100RF is that it is the only compact fixed focal length large format camera with a leaf shutter. What's so good about a leaf shutter? Yes, you can shoot at higher shutter speeds when you're shooting flash, but the other benefit, and the benefit for street photography, is that you can take discrete photos that you would otherwise be noticed for. So all that to say, you can take more candid photos with this camera, and it allows you to get into places that you normally wouldn't feel comfortable taking photos in. So huge benefit of the 100RF. So finally now we have a large format, high resolution camera that's able to take candid photos, essentially. All right guys, I don't know if you can see this properly, but do you see this vision? Right now I am shooting into a reflection, and as people are walking past, they're creating reflections. Tips on a rainy day: try to look for reflections, trying to look for any source of artificial lighting that you can latch onto. Shots like this where you've got a lot of detail going on. So at 1/125th of a second, I can get an ISO of 400. So let's bring it down to 1/60th of a second at f11, and that'll take it down to ISO 250. So I reckon we can take the shot now. Yeah, I reckon that looks pretty good. Today is the last day that I got the Fujifilm GFX100RF to test, and thank God the sunlight is popping through after like 3 consecutive days of bad weather. So I'm going to make the most of this time, and I'm going to try and get some more decent shots on this GFX100RF, because man, I'm running out of photos. I need more photos for this review. Let's go. While these photos are playing, I just wanted to circle back to my experiences with the autofocus and shutter speed on the GFX100RF. The 3 photos you just saw were taken with face eye tracking enabled and shot at 1/500th of a second. Not only did it miss focus on the face and chose the background instead, there is also some motion blur caused by the subject and I being both relatively in motion. Now for most people, this shouldn't be an issue, but for the few photographers who like to shoot like myself, you're going to have a rough time getting used to slowing down a bit more than you normally would. Honestly, it was a struggle trying to come up with a cohesive conclusion to what this camera is, who it's for, and whether I would personally recommend it. It goes without saying that this camera is a beautiful piece, and Fujifilm have done a very fine job at bringing something different to the market. Great resolution in a compact body, intuitive controls, and decent overall user experience. It's a quiet, capable, and unassuming beast that could have been perfect. While the f4 aperture doesn't bother me as much, the lack of IBIS certainly does. Fujifilm had every chance to make this possible. It would have been the best compromise to quell the concerns of handheld low light shooting at f4. The aspect ratio dial and crop mode lever on the GFX100RF was underutilized in my testing. I tried really hard to find a use case for my style of photography, and unfortunately, it was a struggle. I didn't use the crop mode because I shoot raw and can crop in post. I only used the X-Pan 65:24 aspect ratio to get better framing and example images for this video. These features were really meant for JPEG shooters, which is fine, but this is an expensive 102 megapixel large format camera that takes 16-bit RAW files. Kind of feels like a waste. This camera would be perfect for those already into the Fujifilm system who either own an existing GFX camera and want a compact, lightweight body to complement their setup, or for those who use and love the look and feel of the X100 cameras and want a seamless upgrade to something more substantial. If you're somebody who resonates with my style of photography, I would recommend to think twice about this camera. It's a fair weather friend that truly shines when the light outside does. If you like to run and gun and lean into the quick and discreet shooting method, the autofocus on the GFX100RF is not consistent. Coupled with the large resolution sensor and the need to shoot at higher shutter speeds to eliminate hand jitter, and you get a camera that leaves much to be desired. But that's just my opinion. Take it for what you will. Despite everything, the GFX100RF is a step in the right direction, and I am keen to see how Fujifilm can build upon this foundation. So what do you guys think? Leave your comments below. Make sure to subscribe and get more videos like this, and I'll see you all in the next one. And there goes.